Good evening, everyone. I am Jeff Weaver. I am a candidate for the 11th District Court of Appeals and not the seat that Ron is running for. We're not running against each other. I want to thank Tom and Ann for inviting me here this evening. I have met some of you before. I was here a few months ago. And since we have more than the 2 minutes that we are normally afforded for these things, I want to tell you a little bit about myself first, then tell you what I stand for and why I want to get elected and why I think you should vote for me. I grew up on a farm in southern Indiana. I moved to Northeast Ohio in 1991, and I started practicing in the Lake County Prosecutor's Office in the Appellate Division. One of the first cases I handled was the Kirtland cult cases. I don't know if you remember those, but I wrote the death penalty brief for Jeff Lundgren, which was ultimately successful, and argued the cases for wrote the briefs for two others and argued one of them. After that, I left and went into private practice. I have been an attorney for 23 years. I have my own practice now, which is in Mentor, Ohio, and it's just me. I'm a sole practitioner. I'll come back to that in a minute. I live in Kirtland with my children, Jess and Alex, and soon-to-be wife, Cheryl. I have practiced in a variety of areas. Lately, there's been an emphasis on probate work, but I've done a lot of other things, including recently some criminal defense work. The heroin epidemic in Northeast Ohio has not been good for Ohio, but unfortunately, it's been good for business. And that wasn't meant to be funny either. It's just that's the case. I graduated from DePauw University in Greencastle, Indiana. I attended Columbia University for graduate school, and I graduated from New York University School of Law. When I went into practice, I thought the first thing I wanted to do was to learn how to try a case, which is part of the reason why I went to the prosecutor's office instead of to some other law firm or whatever. One of the things that I think distinguishes me from my opponent is she has been a public employee for her entire career, the whole time. She puts on her website that she practiced for the family law firm, but basically she has been a public employee. She doesn't know what it's like to run a business. She doesn't know what it's like to have to pay the bills, to manage a business, and stay within a budget. She just doesn't know it because she's never done it. I do. That is something that I think is important, even for a judicial post, because it makes you appreciate what you have to do to make ends meet. And too many public officials, and I'm not talking about judges, just too many, don't understand that anymore. Look at our federal government. $17 trillion debt. I wish I could have that, but I don't. And I won't, and I never will, but that's the mentality that goes into that sometimes. And I also want to say I hate following Ron because he talks about half the stuff I want to. So I can't I won't repeat the things that he already said. But everything he said about that court is true. It's a slow time getting opinions out. The information available is non-existent. And I, too, have not seen a budget for the 11th District Court of Appeals. And that's a problem. There needs to be some transparency. As far as I go, I want you all to know that I'm pro-life, and I strongly support the Second Amendment. I am a member of the NRA, which I'm allowed to say, but I am a proud member of the NRA. And I want to tell you a little bit why being pro-life is important. In Ohio, if a female under the age of 18 wants to get an abortion without her parents' consent, she can go to the juvenile court in the county in which she resides and request what's called a bypass hearing. At the bypass hearing, the juvenile court judge hears evidence to determine whether or not the person is of sufficient maturity and intellectual I can't even remember the actual term, whatever, to decide whether she needs an abortion. If the answer is no from the juvenile court, there is a vehicle to go straight to the Court of Appeals to get another opinion. Now, I simply cannot imagine an instance where a 15-year-old girl can make an intelligent decision about whether or not to get an abortion. I can't tell you how I'm going to decide every case, but I can tell you where I'm leaning, and you can guess that here. It's important to have that perspective on the court. I honestly don't know, because these things are entirely confidential, how the courts rule on these things. I have no idea. I was a prosecutor in the juvenile court for about a year in Lake County, and I didn't even know what a bypass hearing was. And they have them at 8 in the morning, so nobody's around, and then the decision gets made. I have no statistics on it. Nobody knows how these things are determined. But that's something that we need to know about. I think, just as Ron said, I think I can do a better job. My opponent has taken lately to reversing criminal convictions on what I view as pretty flimsy basis. That's not to say that criminal defendants don't deserve a fair hearing. They certainly do. People get charged sometimes and they're not guilty. I understand that. But to reverse convictions for reasons that seem to me to be very sketchy, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to be law and order and the hanging judge or anything like that. I am not. But I will be fair. And that's what I think we want in the 11th District Court of Appeals. It's a court that very few people know very much about. It's one of those things that is kind of out there, but you don't know what it does. But it's important because the Court of Appeals is essentially the court of last resort. If you have a court hearing at the trial court level, things don't go your way, you have a right to appeal to the Court of Appeals. If you lose there, the Supreme Court has discretionary ability to hear the case. So you may or may not get in. And in fact, the vast majority of cases don't get into the Supreme Court. The Court of Appeals is your last shot. And you want judges, like Ron and I, to be on that court so that you're going to get a fair hearing. Now, one last thing. When you vote, and I'm pretty sure everybody here in this room is going to vote, please vote all the way down the ballot. The judicial candidates are near the bottom, for whatever reason, but they're near the bottom. And a lot of people don't know the names, they don't know anything about the people, and they just don't vote for judicial candidates. The fall off from the governor or the president or whatever is amazing. So we have people being elected judges with a fraction of the actual voting public. It is hard enough to run in 5 counties, but then when you find out that 35% of the people didn't even vote for a judge, it's a little dispiriting, which is my problem, not yours. But please vote all the way down the ballot. The other difficulty you have, this is my favorite part, is there are so many judicial candidates on the ballot that it's hard to remember names. My name is Jeff Weaver. In November, remember, leave it to Weaver. Thank you very much.